Artist versus creative? Is there a difference? Let's talk about that. In today's topic, join me while I paint. I'm Samaj. This is Creating with Samaj. Great to have you here. I thought that it would be wonderful if we talked further about what it is to be an artist versus a creative. So grab your paints, grab your tools, whatever you want, or just sit back and enjoy the opportunity of us being here together today as we paint and we create together. So, what does it mean to be an artist? That's really the question. And how does that differ from being a creative? And I think it's important to talk about that in real time because since our conversation the other day on what kills creativity, and you can see that video right here, I think it's important that we talk about the creative versus the artist, and we spend a little time unpacking that. So maybe the first place to start is with the definition of what it is to be an artist. So, traditionally speaking, an artist is someone with a natural inclination, usually, or a talent for visual expression in some form. They often see the world in different and unique ways. I think of a friend of mine who is not talented as an artist, and she will admit that, but she dresses incredibly, and the way she puts outfits together just blows my mind. And I always tell her that's her artistic flair. And I think that's important that she know that and she celebrate that about herself because she doesn't see that as artistic, but it is. It's incredible. So when I think about people like her, they think about the world in unique ways. She sees, the value of depth, of texture. She sees fabric. She sees pattern. She sees all of that stuff on top of each other. And if I did it, it would look like someone threw up on me. And yet she does it, and it's people stopping her on the street asking her about her look. So some people have it and some people don't. I think it's the ability really to have a honed or an innate idea about things. There are some people who understand shadows. There are some people who understand depth and perspective. I have a friend that when he was young in school, he used to draw all the time. Just these incredible perspective drawings on, and I'm going to date myself, on peachy folders. Yes, inside his peachy folder, he used to draw the most amazing things, and it would blow my mind. Later, he became an architect, of course, but his perspective from a young age was just incredible. So I think there are things that are undeniable, that are absolute talents and gifts. But on the other hand, a creative, right? A person who is a creative may not possess the talent, but they have a drive and a passion, and they show up every single day to be in that process of being creative. So I think that for creatives, that act of creativity thrives in their existence. It just is a part of who they are. It's Their curiosity to learn about the world and their creative struggle shows up in lots of different ways. It could show up in cooking, it could show up in gardening, it could show up in home decorating and DIY projects. It just can show up in so many different ways. And for the person who is the creative, they don't limit themselves to just one thing. Whereas if we explore the artist, they perceive things completely different and from a different platform, I think, in the way they think. So maybe an artist does landscapes, and they have a natural ability to paint a realistic landscape, even if they don't pursue it as a career, as something that they invest in to make money. There isn't any doubt that they're not an artist, right? That they have that innate quality or thing about them that they're just really doggone good at. I think that is the person who is the artist. And they have a particular way of understanding how proportion works and how light works, how it shows up, how it's perceived. And they resonate differently. They just see things differently than maybe a creative does, because they approach it not from a sense of not from maybe a sense necessarily of exploration as much as from a sense of knowing what is to do, right? So I think that artists recognize things that others may not, and creatives may notice it too, right? Things like the way the light spills across the pavement, maybe the value of how textures, like my friend, she applies those textures together and she creates these incredible artistic design in her looks or in her space. And I think the question often comes up, what happens if you have that talent and you don't do anything with it? Are you still an artist? And I think that the answer to that is you are. You are an artist in that respect because you have this innate talent and gift that just exists inside you. It is just part of you, your DNA, how you were wired when you were here, when you came here. And there's no getting around what an artist is capable of in that vein of whatever their artistry is. I know some people who are incredible artist bakers. They bake incredible things and they have artistic talent there, but they limit themselves to what they know as bakers and they don't branch out too much in their flavor palettes or other things, whereas a creative may do that. A person who's a creative may have an idea to put different flavor profiles together in something, or may have a desire to put together different color combinations and push the envelope a little bit more, maybe with abstract shapes. And they're going to let their intuition guide them. Let their intuition direct them to what it is that they want to do to express whatever it is that they're trying to in that moment. And a creative also can channel, you know, their energy in other things, in home decor and DIY projects, in writing. Maybe you have digital skills and you have, incredible ability to do stuff on the computer. There's all sorts of ways to see how you show up and how creativity and being artistic can have similarities. However, one is really practiced and the other just seems to feel as if it's more innate, part of literally the person's DNA. And we all know people like that. We all know people who, no matter what they do, as an artist, they're just good at it. They're just really good at what they do. So, how do these two worlds collide? How do they meet each other? And how do the identities of those two things show up in real life? I think we've talked a little bit about it here. We've talked about my friend who is great at putting style together and making things look really good. But we didn't talk about the person who may be an artist but doesn't apply their art regularly, and does that still make them an artist? And I think the answer to that is yes, because we have to think about a person who is a photographer and captures incredible photographs with ease. Just it's as if they just pick up their camera and snap it. And I almost put green for the sky. Can you imagine what that would have been like? Goodness gracious, I had to catch myself. Let's think about a photographer and the landscapes that they do. My partner's that person. He has a great eye. He can just pick up a camera, take a picture, and you're like, wow, how much time did you take to do that? He's like, I just pointed and shot. I didn't really think about it. Whereas me, I think about the composition. I'm like trying to figure it out. And I think the time that I invest in photography, I don't get the photograph that's as natural as the one that he gets. And it just has a different energy about it. So we have to think about how both things are valid. Both things contribute to the world. Both things have beauty, but the perspective that they have or that they share about what they are is just different between the two. It just is. So I mentioned a person who's a baker. I have a friend who is a baker. And she is classically trained. And I asked her recently, a couple of years ago, I guess that's not so recent, to do something for me, and she couldn't bring herself to do it. She said her classical training wouldn't allow her to do such a thing. And I laughed at that. And she said, I'm an artist, and that's what I am. And I said, oh, okay. So she defined for me what that was. And so I had to really laugh at that experience with her, because whereas I was willing to take the risk and do something kind of crazy and maybe a little out of the box, she wasn't willing to do that in the sense of her creation because of her professionalism and how she was brought up and how she creates her things. So when we speak about this, I think you're just going to have to figure out on your path who you are, whether you are that person who is really good at a particular thing and invests a lot of time in that thing and just keeps showing up for it daily, or if you're going to be a dabbler and the person who just dabbles in what they do and wonders, how do you get to that place that you see everybody else at? That happens when we enjoy the creativeness that we see in others and we recognize that and we celebrate that and we let go of the attachment that I often speak about. The attachment sort of in the process of doing this. I've not thought about any of the strokes I've made or what I've done, or literally, I have not thought about anything. I'm just doing it. And look, I enjoy how it's showing up for me. You might have a natural talent for music. You might have a natural talent and a curiosity for something else. I think it's important to embrace those curiosities and to follow that trail and that breadcrumb. If you are really good at something, maybe invest a little energy and time in it. And if you are like me, a person who is nothing more than a creative, someone who enjoys investing a little energy daily into the experience of creating, I think it's about intuition for me. And creativity doesn't live alone in isolation. It's connected deeply to who we are and however it shows up for you. For me, it shows up in lots of different ways. It shows up in gardening, cooking, this time that I spend with you painting, not being attached to the outcome. When we do this thing that's reflective for us, it allows our inner world to connect with our outer world, and oftentimes it brings answers to us that we may not realize we were searching for by just taking the time to be a little present in the experience. So, as we wrap up today, I would just like to reflect that I encourage you to think about your creative energy. Are you someone who identifies more as an artist or someone who identifies more as a creative? Let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to hear you weigh in on this conversation. Do you see a blend of both in yourself? Where do you land? And how do you feel about yourself in that space of being a creative or an artist? Creativity for me is about showing up. It's showing up for yourself with your ideas, with your process of however you get to whatever it is that you're doing. So whether you're painting with me or you're reflecting on these ideas, I want you to just take a moment to honor the way you create uniquely for yourself, how you take time to make that which speaks about you. Because in the end, like I always say, the time that you invest in you is always the best investment with the greatest rewards. Thank you for spending time with me. I'm Samaj. This is Creating with Samaj. Keep creating and following your intuition. And until next time.